I know that BR games are a dime a dozen these days, but one of the first that I played regularly was PUBG, and there are rumours floating around that suggest a new one is on the way, but sadly I don't think it's true. PUBG leaker player IGN made a post earlier this month saying that PUBG 2.0 is in the works, as well as a new mobile game. However, I think that it's possibly wide of the mark. Kim Chang-han, who is CEO of PUBG Corp's parent company Krafton, said that they plan to release a new mobile version of PUBG this year, as well as a new PUBG related game on PC and console by next year. I think that's the important part of it though, PUBG related. Now you may have heard of a game called the Callisto Protocol, and it was teased at the back end of last year. It's a story-driven single-player survival game being made by a new studio called Striking Distance. And that studio is run by none other than Glenn Schofield, the co-founder of previous Sledgehammer games. Why is this important? Well, the game is based in the PUBG universe. Don't ask me how. Striking Distance is also part of Krafton, and it just reaffirms Krafton and PUBG's plan on building multiple games around their universe. With the Callisto project not due until 2022, it's possible that there is another PUBG game on the way. But I very much doubt that it would be PUBG 2.0 as some people have speculated or would maybe expect or want yet. Not only that, but part of me thinks, why do they need to make PUBG 2? PUBG on PC right now has 100,000 concurrent players with a 400,000 24-hour peak. I've just checked, and I've no doubt that the console version would boost those numbers significantly. In terms of PUBG Mobile, well, that's been downloaded over 700 million times. It's incredibly popular still. That should give you a rough idea of just how popular it is. Not only that, but the PC version is based on a live service model. They're adding lots of cosmetic items for sale, seasonal events, and even plenty of new maps. In fact, when I jumped in, having not played for a while, I came across a new map called Haven that I didn't even realize was in the game. And this was a seasonal map. I just guess there wasn't that much buzz about it on social media. Now, just because I don't think PUBG 2.0 is coming anytime soon, that didn't stop me thinking about what that game would actually look like from my perspective. What would I want changed and what would I improve on? And of course, this is entirely subjective. It's just based on my experiences with the game, with other games, and things that I enjoy as a gamer. Now, when PUBG originally released, it gained popularity way beyond what was expected, and the devs at the time were called Bluehole, and I don't think they expected that either. The netcode was pretty bad, performance was often worse, and server stability wasn't all the best either. Not exactly a recipe for success, except it was. Over time, the game improved no end. Performance is really good now, the netcode is definitely better, and the movement mechanics have seen a lot of refinement, to name just a few key changes. And I don't know if this is the case with PUBG, but I know that from speaking to developers from other games that sometimes new features and certain game mechanics are not possible without very time-consuming code changes. Sometimes if you want certain game features, you'd have to start from the ground up from scratch. And of course, now the next-gen consoles are firmly within our grasp, if you can actually buy one. You have to say that PUBG isn't the best looking game of all time. It's not that it's a bad looking game. In fact, there were times when I thought it's pretty good, but the animations and lighting are especially looking quite dated now. Some of the textures and models in particular too feel quite old gen. And PUBG originally released back in 2016, and remember then it was an early access game too, and at times I do think that some of the maps lack visual cohesion. What I mean is that there are times I'm walking around some of the new maps feeling as though someone has just plucked down a load of Unreal Engine assets to make it into a playable area. With the original map, there were a lot of reused assets, lots of buildings were the same regardless of where you were on the map. Towns didn't feel all that different to each other because they had the same empty buildings. I have to say that as development has gone along and new maps have been added, refinements have been made, there is a bit more variation now. I have to give credit where it's due, and I'd like to see that continue. But I do think that the maps could benefit from a bit more theming at times. And while we're on the topic of maps, what number is too many? I can't believe that this is an issue now, considering there was a time where I myself and others were hoping and wishing for a second PUBG map every day. But I think that in PUBG now, there's way too many. This opinion may not be shared by people who play the game every day today, so bear with me. But right now you can't even choose what map you play because clearly they realised that some of the maps had extremely long matchmaking times because people just weren't playing them. As a result, they left multiple maps in the pool and now you're given one of them randomly. And this means that I could very likely end up on a map that I don't even want to play, which isn't ideal. The only map that you can choose separately is the seasonal map in the gameplay footage here. So what if PUBG in the future adopted the same system that other BR games have done? Have one extensively worked map, but change it up during new seasons with different areas, different weather, whatever it may be. If you're building a universe around a game, you could use this as a way to integrate different changes into the map. If you mix it up regularly, you ensure it doesn't get stale for players, but you're also simplifying the matchmaking. You could still have your seasonal map be separate though. Perhaps this isn't something that the majority of the players would want. I'm just speaking from my own personal perspective, but other people may enjoy having a completely different map to play every single time that they queue. I have to talk about pacing as well. I've of course been playing a lot of Warzone recently, and while there isn't much time between gunfights, I'm well aware that PUBG is not Warzone. They're vastly different games in terms of their mechanics, and I respect that. And what I love about PUBG is the gunplay. It's slower, more challenging, and it takes more skill in terms of controlling the recoil, burst firing, accuracy. That being said, when I played a few solos, the amount of times the player count was down to 20 to 30 by the time I'd finished looting and moving into the zone was just crazy. Some of these maps are substantial in size, and going to play other games just enhances how off the pacing is to me. I played the new seasonal map, Haven, which only has 32 players, and even that felt empty at times. Couple this with the fact that you can just loot up on meds and stay in the blue zone for a lot longer than other games, and you can make the downtime even worse. And I can't be the only one that feels that way though, I would have thought. How do you fix that issue? More players? A respawn mechanic? The latter? Probably a more controversial topic for PUBG, because I wonder how many PUBG players would want something like that in their game. It would certainly make playing squads more enjoyable for me, knowing that I could get my teammates back in. But I think a lot of the player base prefer the fact that PUBG is more unforgiving and challenging. It's probably a big selling point for a lot of people. Whatever route they went down though, I'd like to certainly see some tweaks to the downtime and the pacing. And part of that could be simplifying the attachment system. Right now there are so many attachments and items. In fact, there are new ones that I've not even encountered before. So you could simplify the system so you pick up rarities of weapons instead of separate attachments. But despite the fact that this would get you in and out of the action quicker without taking away from the actual gunplay, I imagine that this wouldn't be popular with some players. And I think another big improvement, which I would hope would be the least controversial of all, would be the movement. Over the last few years there have been tons of improvement to the movement and animations in the game, as well as adding new ones and improving the vaulting. Despite all of that though, the game still feels incredibly sluggish to me. And I'm not talking about the movement speed as such. We know that this is a more methodical game, but the animations for movements don't feel as crisp as they could be. Almost like there's a bit of input lag to your character at times. And I'd probably look at the vehicle physics too, because they can certainly cause some issues and, of course, a few funny moments. It's also sometimes really easy for me to forget that PUBG has two different modes that also separate the matchmaking: first person and third person. When the game first launched, it was third person only. In fact, I think it was designed that way. And then first person mode was added after quite a lot of requests. It's the only mode that I'll play now, first person, if I load up the game. That being said, I remember seeing an infographic some time ago, although I can't seem to find it for the source, that would suggest that third person is way more popular across the entire player base. While I personally wouldn't like to see first person mode disappear, I think it's okay to wonder if the game needs to just choose what it wants to be and just make that the game. Own the decision whether this is first or third person, and that's how the game's meant to be. On the flip side, I appreciate that the devs have put the option in there, but it does separate the player base somewhat, so if they ever make PUBG 2, perhaps they should just pick one or the other. And then there are the other things that I would love to see improved too for a hypothetical PUBG 2. The netcode, while better than it was 4 years ago, still isn't where it could be. The sound system is incredibly inconsistent, especially when it comes to verticality. It just makes it really difficult to judge players' locations. And then we have anti-cheat. This has been such a big issue with PUBG that has plagued the game for months. Cheaters. On PC, we accept that with all the best intentions in the world, you can't completely eliminate the issue, and I don't expect any game developer to do that, even though it would be fantastic. That being said, more has to be done to ensure that cheating is dealt with in PUBG quickly and harshly. This definitely seems to be a big area that needs some attention and work when it comes to PUBG. Wrapping things up, I still think PUBG is a good game, even if it does feel a bit dated these days. But the idea of a new PUBG built on a newer engine, Unreal Engine 5 from scratch, would actually really interest me. But sadly, I think any PUBG game we're going to get in the next few years will simply be within the universe rather than a direct sequel or a spin-off. We can hope though, right? PUBG 2, I'd be all about it. With that said, do let me know down in the comments below, if you were the game designer in charge of building PUBG 2, what would be your top 3 priorities or changes for the game? And that's all, guys. Do leave a like if you enjoyed the video. Thank you. That's a great way to help support me. Dislike it if you didn't like it. Not a problem at all. Subscribe for more, and I'll see you in the next one.